Hi everyone, my name is Brad Bearden. I'm the product manager for Acctivate, and this is a deep dive into payments and Acctivate. So we have a lot to cover, so we will move quickly here. And just as a reminder, we will have a recording of this posted later on if you miss anything. All right, I want to start by outlining what we'll cover in this webinar. In a second, I'll identify the roles that Acctivate and QuickBooks play in payments. I'll then cover the configuration required to begin working with payments. We'll then look at the inner payment window in Acctivate, and then we'll look at the payments and sales orders. The last two do sound pretty similar, but there's some specific differences that I do want to point out. Okay, so let's look at a comparison of Acctivate and QuickBooks' role in payment processing. Both programs allow you to save a credit card per customer, so that's one card per customer. And in either program, you can save the credit card number, the expiration date, the name on the card, the street address, and the zip for the card. We will not store the card security code, and that's per the Payment Application Data Security Standard. However, you can enter it at the time of processing a payment. We'll take a look at what that looks like in a little bit. And of course, when we store the credit card, it is stored encrypted within the database. In the Acctivate application itself, the card is human readable if you have the proper user permissions, but otherwise the card number is masked and you'll see all X's with the last 4 digits of the card exposed. Saved credit card information in Acctivate can be synchronized to QuickBooks. QuickBooks doesn't allow any application to access stored credit cards, nor are the stored credit cards in QuickBooks available for any inclusion in any of their reports. So there's no way to extract that information and get it into Acctivate. So that being said, I'd suggest that you save any card information in Acctivate so that you only have to enter it in one place, and then it'll, again, synchronize to QuickBooks, and it's available in both programs. In both programs, you can process credit cards. Your credit card processor will need to be configured and integrated with each program where you want to charge cards. If you want to charge cards in both, QuickBooks Payments is a great option as it's supported by QuickBooks, of course, and also Acctivate. And when recording a payment, it can be applied to open invoices, or payment can be left as an overpayment, which then can be used as a credit later on. At any point, you can also change the payment application. So if you've applied a payment to an invoice and you want to unapply it from that invoice to maybe apply it to a different invoice, you can do that in Acctivate as well. And then when taking a payment in Acctivate, you can record a discount. So for example, that could be an early payment discount, or if you needed to write off the remaining balance of a invoice, you could. Now in the column on the right here, I have some of the QuickBooks features. So QuickBooks, as your accounting software, does perform some specific functions. New payment methods are set up in QuickBooks, or edits to existing payment methods are made in QuickBooks, and then those will synchronize over into Acctivate. If you want to process e-checks, you can do that in QuickBooks if you have QuickBooks set up with QuickBooks Payments. We will add support for e-checks in the future in Acctivate, but today processing e-checks would occur in QuickBooks. In QuickBooks, you can refund a credit card as well. And then QuickBooks can be integrated with your bank via bank feeds, which will download and reconcile deposits automatically for you. And I would recommend that method, but you can also use the make deposits function, which is a bit more manual, but I'll outline that process. But make deposits is a transaction that combines payments and deposits into your account. Okay, so the first thing we'll need to do is perform some configuration, and here's just a brief outline of that configuration that needs to occur. And I've listed some optional configuration as well. So as I mentioned in my previous slide, payment methods are created and edited in QuickBooks and then synchronized to Acctivate. And then optionally, you can enable the Undeposited Funds account in QuickBooks. And if you're not familiar with that, the Undeposited Funds account is an other current asset account where all received payments are held until the payments post or you deposit them. So this account acts as a holding account, and the purpose of it is to keep your bank account from being overstated. You don't add it to your bank account until those payments have cleared. So while it is optional, it's very useful, and I would recommend that you set it up, and we'll take a look at how to do that in QuickBooks. And then I won't be demonstrating how to set up QuickBooks payments in QuickBooks. I do have it configured in my QuickBooks account, my QuickBooks company file. But you would want to do that if you plan on processing payments in QuickBooks. Now in Acctivate, I mentioned that the payment methods are set up and edited in QuickBooks, but in Acctivate you can define whether that payment method is a credit card or not. And identifying a payment method as a credit card in Acctivate affects how that payment method behaves. And I'll show you some examples. And then, of course, in order to process credit cards in Acctivate, you would need to integrate your credit card processor with Acctivate. And then finally, there are various permissions that can be configured to restrict access to credit card function and other payment functions. Okay, so let's dive into this configuration together. And we're going to start in QuickBooks. Okay, so the first thing we'll need to do is set up a new payment method. And we can do that by going to Lists, Customer and Vendor Profile Lists, and then Payment Method List. So I'm going to add a new payment method, and I'm going to call it Amex, short for American Express. I'm going to select the payment type of American Express. You'll need to match the payment type to the payment method, and that step is extremely important if you're processing credit cards in QuickBooks with QuickBooks Payments, because this is how QuickBooks knows that it's a credit card. If you don't have credit card processing configured for your QuickBooks file, I would still suggest trying to match the most appropriate payment type to the payment method. So that's all we have to do. I'm going to click OK, and that'll sync over to Acctivate when we run a sync. I mentioned that the undeposited funds account was optional, but I would recommend using it if you're dealing with a lot of payments. So I'm going to go to Edit, Preferences. And then if we go to Payments, on the company preferences, so this is a company-wide option, we can enable the Use Undeposited Funds account. So before I do that, I want to show you the behavior of how this works if you don't have it enabled. So if you go to Customer, Receive Payments, I'm going to receive a payment from ABC, payment amount of $100. And down here, we'll call this cash. Okay. I'm going to change the deposit to account to be First Savings Bank Checking. And I'm going to go ahead and save this. Okay. So if I go back and I receive another payment, I go to Receive Payments, and I receive another payment from ABC, what you'll notice is the deposit to account defaults to the last used account. So QuickBooks doesn't have a concept of a default deposit to account unless you're using undeposited funds, which I'll show you in a second. So it defaults to the last used account, and that holds true for synchronization of payments from Acctivate to QuickBooks. So if you were to put in a payment in Acctivate, it'll synchronize to QuickBooks and use the last deposit to account, which may not be desirable. So the undeposited funds is a solution to this scenario. I'm going to go to Edit Preferences, go back to Payments. We're going to enable the Use Undeposited Funds as the default deposit to account. And when I do that and I go to Customer, Receive Payments, you'll notice now that I don't have the option to select the account. It's all payments will use the undeposited funds account. So in a bit, we'll create some payments in Acctivate, and we'll see how those sync over to the undeposited funds account in QuickBooks and how that works. Okay, so I'm not going to set up or show you how to set up QuickBooks Payments in QuickBooks. I do have it set up. So we've created our payment method, we've enabled the undeposited funds account, and we can run a synchronization. Okay. So we'll go ahead and Activate, and we'll do Synchronize. Okay, so we've completed a synchronization. So let's go into the Acctivate Configuration Manager and perform some configuration. So first, let's look at the payment methods in Acctivate. So if I go to Sales Order, Payment Methods, I have a list of payment methods from QuickBooks. And as you see, the one I just created, Amex, is here. And it's already configured as a credit card based on how I set it up in QuickBooks by choosing that payment type of American Express. But I can also choose to define payment methods as a credit card in Acctivate. So I'm going to click Edit. I'm going to select Visa, MasterCard as a credit card. So the question is, why would I identify payment methods as a credit card? When you do have a credit card processor configured in Acctivate, these payment methods will be treated as credit cards, and you'll be presented with the credit card related fields, such as the card number, address, card security code field, etc. And that information is then transmitted to your credit card processor. If you don't have a credit card processor configured, you may still want to identify which of these payment methods are credit cards, because as I mentioned earlier, credit card information can be saved in Acctivate for a customer. And you can also save a preferred payment type. And if you have credit card information saved for a customer and their preferred payment type is defined as a credit card, whenever you select that preferred payment type on the customer sales order, for example, or in the enter payment window, it'll pre-populate the reference field with their card number. The last 4 digits, it'll be all masked, and you'll see the last 4 digits of the card number. You won't be processing the credit card because you don't have a credit card processor set up, but it can just be a reference that autofills for you. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and set Visa, MasterCard to be a credit card. I'm going to make a comment now that I'll elaborate a little bit later on, but I'm going to leave credit card defined as not being a credit card, and I'll explain that when we look at entering payments on a sales order. Okay, so let's go ahead and set up a credit card processor. I'm going to go to Services, Credit Card Processing. So Acctivate can be integrated with QuickBooks Payments and Authorize.net. QuickBooks Payments is the preferred payment processor for Acctivate because it integrates with both Acctivate and, of course, QuickBooks. And that allows you to charge the card in either program. Since it's an Intuit product, there's also a lot of support in QuickBooks for automatically downloading and reconciling payment transactions, payments that were processed through QuickBooks Payments. So again, it's the preferred payment processor due to it providing the best payment processing experience. If you don't have a QuickBooks Payments account, you can click here to sign up with QuickBooks Payments. That'll take you to our landing page, and you have the option to fill out an application and submit it. Or if you have any questions, there's a link to get in touch with someone here, and we can help you with any questions or walk you through that application process. Once the application is submitted, the turnaround time's typically about 24 hours, so it's very quick. If you do have an Authorize.net account, that is, of course, supported, and you would just click this button to connect to Authorize.net. I am going to set us up with QuickBooks Payments, so I'm going to click this. And it'll take me to the login page here. I can put in my password, sign in. And it's the first time you set it up. I've set this up before. You may have to give it permission saying yes, that you want to allow Acctivate to connect to your QuickBooks Payments account. But in this case, you can see it's very smooth. It's just one other click you'd have to do. But in this case, it has been connected. The Intuit Payments authorization process will continue in Acctivate. So I can go ahead and close this window. And back in Acctivate, I have a dialog here that tells me that it's currently connected to QuickBooks Payments. And if I want to disconnect it, I would just click at it and then disconnect it. Okay, so lastly, let's configure some user permissions and sync options. So for user permissions, we will go to the user section, click on user information. I am logged in as the user SYS, so I will expand SYS here. And there's a few permissions we can look at. So first, I'm going to expand the customer folder. And the first permission I want to talk about is the credit card information permission. This is a permission to store and view credit card information for a customer. So I've already mentioned a few times that you can store credit card information for a customer. If the user has maintained, they can view the credit card, the full credit card number, expiration date, card info, and they can edit that information, or they can add that credit card. If it's view only, the user would be able to view the customer's credit card number, expiration date, other credit card fields, but they wouldn't be able to edit or add new credit card information. And then, of course, if it's not allowed, they would not be able to view the full credit card number and other information. They would be able to view the masked credit card number, and again, that is when the credit card number is all X's except for the last 4. So they'd be able to see the last 4, but that's it. Okay, and then the customer payments permission. This controls our new enter payment window, which is new to 11.1. And likewise, if it's maintained, the user can create payments through the enter payment window. They can edit payments, edit how the payment's applied, for example. If the permission is view only, they would be able to view a payment, see how it's applied to invoices, but they wouldn't be able to make any changes to it. And if it's not allowed, the user would, of course, not be allowed to even open that window or view that payment and how it's applied. So I want that to be maintained. And then under sales order, process credit cards. This permission corresponds to a credit card processor. If this is set to yes, then the user would be able to charge a credit card within Acctivate. If it's set to no, they can still put in credit card information and save it as a payment. They just would not be able to actually charge the card. Okay, so I'm going to set that to yes. Now, in terms of some other options, under sales orders, order options, there is a allow payment with order. So this is a company-wide permission as opposed to the user permissions we just saw. And when enabled, there's a payments tab on the enter sales order that allows you to enter payment information where it will be saved until the invoice is created. So for example, you may import in a web order where the payment has already been processed on the website, and that payment info is being imported in with the order, and it will come in into Acctivate on the payments tab of that order. And at that point, when you invoice the order in Acctivate, the payment will automatically be created and linked to the invoice, and then they will sync, the invoice and payment will sync applied to each other to QuickBooks. Another reason that you may want to enter payment information on the sales order is because you want to pre-authorize a credit card for a sales order and then capture the credit card funds when you invoice the order. So we'll look at both of those examples and compare and contrast them, especially to the enter payment window. And then we have a synchronization option I want to talk about real quick, and it is the copy Acctivate credit card information to QuickBooks. And I mentioned this a moment ago. If you save a credit card for a customer in Acctivate, and this option is enabled, when you run a synchronization, Acctivate will send that credit card over to QuickBooks. So again, you have the credit card information available in either program. If you did need to charge it in QuickBooks, you could. It is a one-way. We're only pushing to QuickBooks because, again, QuickBooks does not make it available to export out to Acctivate or any other program. The only thing to be aware of is if you're making edits to saved credit card information, I would just make sure you do it in Acctivate, so that way we push it over to QuickBooks. If you were to put it into QuickBooks, there is the chance that it could be overwritten. So just any additions or changes I would perform in Acctivate. Okay, so we are good there. We can go ahead and close this. We have everything configured now. So first, we want to look at the enter payment window, but before doing that, I do want to show you how to save a credit card payment and kind of define some of that default payment information for a customer. So I'm going to start over in our customers list, and I'm going to look for a customer named Best, and we'll click Edit to open up the Edit Customer window. Okay, so on the Credit tab, I can store some payment information. So first, I have the option to store a preferred payment. For example, if I were to do check and I go to create payment, it is going to open that enter payment window with the customer Best on it, and it's going to default to the type of check. Now, I'm going to change this to be, we'll use our American Express. And over here, I have a credit card and expiration date. So I'm going to put in a credit card for this customer. Obviously, it's not a real credit card, but it's a test credit card I'm going to use. And I can put on, I can put a name in here. I'll put my name. Obviously, I could put an address, a street address, and zip code. I'm going to go ahead and click Save here. So I'm going to recap something I said a moment ago about the user permissions. If my user permission is set to not allowed, this is what I would see, the last four in the expiration date. If my permission for credit cards is for view only, I can click this details button to pop out the unmasked number and other information, but I wouldn't be able to edit it. I wouldn't have been able to add it like I just did. And since I have the maintain permission, I am able to make these changes. Okay, so I'm going to click Save. And now, now that I have a credit card saved and my preferred payment is also one of those payment methods that has that credit card flag checked in the configuration manager, when I choose Create Payment, it's going to open up the enter payment window with the customer, the payment type, and then the credit card information. One thing I will note is that when you, and I'm going to get back into how to get into this enter payment window a few other ways, but when you add a customer or open up the enter payment window for a customer that has a saved credit card, we don't populate the card security code because, of course, we can't save that, as I mentioned earlier. So I don't have the opportunity to enter it in here because I have a saved credit card that is populating. We will, I'll show you how to put in a payment and you'll have the opportunity to enter it in if it's a new payment. Okay, so I've shown you indirectly, I guess, from the Edit Customer window, you can go to Create Payment. It'll open up that Enter Payment window with the customer linked on it. Another way to do that is from the customer list. So if I go to Customers, and again, I search for Best, I can use Create Payment. Likewise, it's going to open up with the payment information. I can also access that window from the customer list. So if I go to Customer, Enter Payment, it'll open up without a customer. I'll need to add the customer. And then you can add a shortcut, and this would be per user. You can add an icon for the Enter Payment window. And just as a reminder for those who may not remember, you can use this shortcut here to add customer payment to the icon bar. Okay, so let's go ahead, now that we know how to get into that window, let's go ahead and create a new payment. I'm going to use a different customer. I'm going to use Bristol. We'll go to Create Payment. So here is the Enter Payment window. I just want to talk about, again, the purpose and anatomy of this window. So the purpose of this window would be to record a payment immediately as a credit to be applied to an invoice later on, or you can apply it to invoices immediately, or some combination of the two. You can apply a payment to some of the invoices and then leave an overpayment that can be used as a credit later on. The anatomy of the window is essentially two primary sections. The top contains the payment header information, so who it's from, the amount, the type, and the date. You'll see the AR account. This will be the account that is credited, with the bank account or undeposited funds being the debited account, and that's just the accounting terms, debits and credits. If you change the AR account here, it'll also affect which invoices are displayed below. So for example, if I want to see, I have 3 AR accounts. If I were to choose the Fort Worth AR account, the invoices have gone away because those invoices use the accounts receivable account. If you only have 1 AR account, you actually wouldn't even see this filter. There's no option to be made, so we would just suppress that, and we'll only show invoices for your AR account. One thing I will point out, with payments, you may have multi-currency enabled, but if you have a credit card processor enabled in Acctivate, we don't allow you to process credit cards for non-USD customers. And that's just based on the merchant. It's not really a restriction of us. But so if you have a Euro customer set up, you wouldn't be able to charge their credit card through QuickBooks payments. But you can record payments for multi-currency customers. So if they paid by check, for example, or cash, you can do that. And the reason I point that out is because, again, you may have 1 Euro account, and if you select a customer that's a Euro currency, you wouldn't see this AR account field. Okay, down in the bottom here, we have all the invoices. So applying to an invoice is optional. Again, you could apply the full payment amount, part of the payment, or none of the payment. They may not have any invoices yet. It may be a prepayment, so you do not have to apply it to an invoice. And again, accessing this window, I showed you the different ways to get in there. The permission, the customer payment permission, is the one that controls access to this window and what you can view and edit. Okay, so let's go ahead and enter a payment, and we'll get familiar with each of these fields. So this customer has given me payment information, and it's for their Amex, so we'll just leave it at that. I'm going to put in their card number. Oops, I think I... Okay, there's some validation there to make sure that you've entered in the full card. Again, I can put in a name. I'll just put in mine, address, postal code. I do have to put in an expiration date, month and year. So I'm going to put in 10 of 2022. All right, so that's all I need. The payment date will default to today's date. Obviously, you can change that if you need to. And then a payment memo is optional if you want to record any kind of memo about this note. This payment. They've given me their card. I put it in here. They've given me instructions to save it. I can, as a shortcut from the Enter Payment window, I can click the Save Card, and I get this pop-up. And it's asking if I want to save the card. And I can't choose yes until I've checked this box that says I have the customer sign authorization to save this card. We don't provide that authorization form. I believe QuickBooks Payments has it. Authorize.net probably has it. I'm sure you can find something online. But if you have written authorization that you're allowed to save the card, you can check this and then click yes. If you have a card security code, you can put that in, but as it indicates with the label here, it will not be saved. So we don't have a place to save that. So I'm going to go ahead and click yes. And that saves the card information. I don't have a preferred payment for this customer, so it's going to ask me if I should also save my Amex payment type as the default payment type for Bristol. So I want to choose yes for that. And if I go look at the customer now, and I go to the credit tab, here you can see the preferred payment is saved and that payment information. All right, so I filled in everything I want to fill in at the moment at the header, except for the payment amount. So there's a couple different ways to fill in the payment amount. I can come down to the invoices and I can check off the first invoice, which has a balance of $980, and the second invoice has a balance of $2,500. So if I check off that first invoice, you'll see it sets the payment amount to $980. Check the second, and it'll sum the balances up for me. So it's going to set the payment amount if your customer is giving you a payment and maybe reference many invoices. You could just check those invoices off and then confirm that the totals match. Once the payment has been applied to all the invoices, this button down here has changed to uncheck all. Earlier it was check all, so if I check all, it checks them all, and I can uncheck all here. Alternatively, you could enter in a payment amount. I'm going to enter a payment amount of $1,500, and then when I check the invoices, it'll apply towards this invoice. So it applied $980, and then the remaining amount of $520 that we see down here will get applied to the second invoice. You can also sort, both of these happen to be in the same branch, the F branch, but you can sort a column by clicking on the column header and then use the auto apply. So if you wanted to pay the oldest invoices first, you could sort by that column, choose auto apply. The payment amount at the top will apply working down the list until the entire payment has been exhausted and there's no more to apply. Okay, so let's, I'm going to leave these unchecked. I'm going to keep the $1,500. What I want to look at in the grid here, we have invoice information, the date of the invoice number, the order number, the branch, the terms code, discount, and discount account. So this invoice has a total of $1,000, but today, the balance that would be due on it if they paid today is $980 because they have an early payment discount due to their terms code of 210 net 30. And when I hover over it, I see a tooltip. You can also click on it to pop this out and get the full explanation here. And it says a 2% discount of $20 is available if fully paid in 10 days by Sunday, July 18th, 2021. And then the full amount is due Saturday, August 7th, 2021. If today was July 19th, then the 20 would not fill in automatically. We are going to show you the eligible discount. You can certainly change that yourself. So you may want to give them a bigger discount. You could say it's a $30 discount, but we will default to the what they're eligible for, and you can change it. Again, if we had gone past the 18th and the discount was 0, you can still click on this to see what that discount would have been. So if the payment just came a day late and you're still going to honor that discount, you would have the full explanation of when the payment was due and the total of it. Now the discount will sync to the discount account defined here. And there's a hierarchy in how it determines what the discount is. It will use the last discount account that the user has selected. So again, my user is SYS. You can see it down in the bottom right. I have used this earned discount GL account before, so it's going to default to that. Now, if I have never entered in a payment, it would use the last discount that anybody has ever used, and we'll get it filled in. So you can click it and change it up. I mentioned earlier you may want to write off a balance. So if it was a $100.01 invoice and they just paid you $100, you could choose to write off the payment. But my earned discount is an early paid discounts account. So I'm going to select that. All right, so I have everything filled in that I would like to fill in. Oh, you know, actually, I do need to apply my payment now. So I'm going to apply part of this here. I'm going to leave some of it as an over a payment. Okay, so I am ready to charge this card. And I would do that by clicking charge and save, but you will see that there's this checkbox that says charge CC. By default, that will be selected if the payment type is a credit card. But there may be a scenario where I don't actually want to charge the card and Activate, but I do want to record this payment and apply it to an invoice. And that there's probably a few scenarios where that occurs. I think the most common would just be something like they called in and someone else took the payment and processed it in your merchant portal. So they go to QuickBooks Payments, log in, charge it there. And then now you just need to record it against the invoice. So you can uncheck this and just save the payment now. It's no longer charge and save, it's just save. But you will be unable to charge this card later. So you can't save it and then come back and charge it at a later date without re-entering it completely. So just be aware of that. I do want to charge it, so I'm going to click charge credit card, and I will hit charge and save. And it's going to give me a message that's leaving a $520 overpayment as a credit to be applied to invoices in the future. And once the credit card has been processed, I get this process payment receipt window. It gives me the name of the card, transaction ID, authorization code, just some of the information about it. So I'm going to go ahead and click close on that. Now with credit cards, we've just submitted that to QuickBooks Payments. They processed it, returned the receipt. I'm going to get this text at the top that says processed credit card information can't be edited. If needed, void, then recreate the payment. We will let you attempt to void the payment, but it's entirely dependent on whether QuickBooks Payments or Authorize.net has batched out the payments. And usually that happens at the end of the day. You should check with your payment processor to see when that actually occurs. But right now, if I were to click void, we would send a void request to QuickBooks Payments, and this payment wouldn't have been batched out yet, so it would let me void it. But if I had waited a couple days and then tried it, it would tell me that I can't void it. So we will let you attempt to void it, but it may not be successful depending on how much time has elapsed. And then below the payment memo, we have some information that you can reference, the transaction ID and authorization code. Okay, so now that we've saved the payment, we charged the card, we have the payment saved, we may want to print a copy of the payment for our records or to send to the customer. So you can do that by clicking print, and that will open up this payment receipt. Very similar to the window, you have some header information at the top, which invoices it's applied to. So we're only going to show the invoices that the payment was applied to. And then down at the bottom, we have the total amount paid, the what was applied, the discounts, and then the amount that was left unapplied. Now, you may want to email it, and you can do that as well by going to the print menu and choosing email payment. We have added in 11.1 some message template fields. So let's take a look at what that would look like real quick. So I'm going to go to File, Message Templates. I'm going to click New. I'm going to call this template Payment. We'll call it Payment Receipt. And down here for the type at the bottom, I want to choose Payment. And I'm going to make this available for all users. I want anybody to have access to this template. So by choosing the type payment, I have payment-related fields I can insert in here, like the transaction ID. So I can say, thank you for, we'll say your payment. Then maybe I want to insert in the payment reference. So reference number. I'm not going to make this fancy, in the amount of, and then we'll say total amount. All right, and I'm just going to keep it simple, so we'll save that. So if I go back to the enter payment window, I choose email payment. It attaches that document as a PDF, and I can insert my template. And it says, thank you for your payment, and it lists the ref number, the credit card number, and the amount of $1,500. And I can send this. It will default, the email address will default to the customer's billing email address. I'm going to show you real quickly where that is. So if I'm in the Edit Customer window for Bristol, on the Phone tab on the left, it will default to this email address. Of course, you can override it or add additional CCs into the email window. Okay, so now that we've entered a payment, let's sync that payment over to QuickBooks. And once the sync is done, we'll take a look at the payment in QuickBooks in a moment, but I want to look at it in Acctivate real quick. So I'm going to go back to the customer list. So once a payment has been entered, whether it's been synchronized or not, you can view it in the customer's timeline. So again, I will go back to Bristol. And I see my payment here under the timeline. Now for the type, you can choose to focus only on payments. And here's my $1,500 payment with the unapplied amount of $520. So to view this payment, if you want to view it in the data presentation screen, I can click the payment type, in this case Amex, and it's going to pop up and it's going to show me the header information, again, the transaction ID, authorization code, and the invoices it's applied to. Now from here, I can also print it or email it, and I can click edit to open it up in the edit payment window. Or I'm sorry, in the enter payment window, or back on this screen, if I hover over the icon, I get the pencil icon, and it'll open up in the enter payment window. Okay, so there's a message up here that appears after I've run a synchronization. It says, this payment has been synchronized with QuickBooks. You will not be able to edit the payment amount or void the payment. In this case, the changes should be made in QuickBooks. There's a reason that we block you from editing the payment amount or voiding the payment. And it's because the payment could be included in a deposit transaction in QuickBooks. So we don't have a way of knowing that. The deposit transaction, again, when you make a deposit in QuickBooks, it combines payments together. Those transactions are locked. You can't change some of that header information like the payment amount. So if it was incorrectly entered, you would simply just go into QuickBooks and change the payment amount if you need to. Now, if it isn't a deposit, you would have to remove it from the deposit and make the change. You can, however, edit the payment application. So I can click edit here, and I can choose to apply that remaining $520 to the second invoice and just save those changes. So can't change the header information, but you can change how the payment is applied. Okay, so that's the enter payment window. I've showed you how it works with a credit card, but the process would be exactly the same for other payment methods, whether it's cash, check, just fewer fields. I can show you something real quick. If I go to Bristol, maybe they do want to pay by cash. I have a reference number field. If it's check, it's a check number field. So same concept, just fewer fields to fill out. All right, now let's take a look at payments with sales orders and just sort of compare and contrast that with the enter payment window. Close this, and we're going to look at sales, and we're going to take a look at this order A1525T for Kirby. Okay, so you can open up the enter payment window from the sales order as well. And you can do that by going to create payment. And what you'll see here, like opening it from the customer window, it's going to open up the enter payment window with the customer already linked to it. And then the only significant difference is the payment memo field is pre-filled in with prepayment for order A1525T. This allows you to record a payment for this customer and save that memo. And then when you go to invoice this order, you'll see it as a credit, and it'll just help you understand that that payment is meant for this order. So let's go ahead and do it. We'll do a $200 payment amount. We'll keep it simple and do check. And let's say they came and they paid us check 1234. The order itself is for $392.39, but maybe I just require some sort of deposit down payment. We don't make any assumptions on what that payment amount should be. It would be entirely up to you, but I'm going to put in a $200 payment, click save. I'm going to leave it as an overpayment. Now, back in the order, when I click create invoice, I will see that I have a credit available. And in parentheses, it tells me how many of the credits I have available for this customer. So it's 1. When I click on that, I have the unapplied credits window. and I see that I have check 1234, and this is a prepayment for order A1525T. So they may have multiple orders going and make multiple, deposits or down payments. And when you come up into this window, you can see which one applies to the invoice you're about to create. Check it off and click apply. And then now we have a total of $392.39, a credit of $200, leaving us a balance. So that payment had already been created. Let's say I did that on a Monday, that would show up, in QuickBooks immediately when you run a sync, and then maybe I don't invoice for 4 or 5 days. I'm creating the invoice later and then linking the two together. And I have invoiced that in full. Okay. Now there's another option that is similar but significantly different. I'm going to open up this order for customer Fisher. So the second option would be to save a payment on the Payments tab. Now, I mentioned earlier there's a configuration option that says allow payments with sales orders, and if that's enabled, you will see this payment tab. So entering payment information here doesn't create the payment until you create the invoice. So what I said just a moment ago is when I entered the payment through the enter payment window, it's immediately creating that payment. There's a financial record of it. If I put in a payment, if I put in any payment information here, it really just acts as a reference until the invoice is created. So I'm going to say it's check, number doesn't matter. I'm going to click save. And when I hit create invoice, I don't have a credit yet because, again, I haven't actually created the payment. I've just stored the payment information here. And then when I click invoice, that will create the payment, create the invoice, link the two together, and set it as a zero balance. So this can be extremely beneficial for orders where you have payments that, you're batch processing orders, for example, and they already have payment information. And for example, like a web store. So let's say your customer goes online onto your web store and they place a $100 order. The web store charges their card for $100. And then you import in the web order. So you have an order for $100 and the payment information from the web store is stored here. Now let's say multiply that by 50. You have 50 orders that you import in. They all have their own payment information. You batch print pick tickets and pick them, and then you batch invoice them. Well, when you do that, it's going to create the invoices of the payments and link them together for you automatically, as opposed to what I did a moment ago where I had to come into the create invoice screen and open up the credits window and select the credit on their account. So that's a little bit of a smoother process for web orders, especially, importing in that payment and then creating it at the same time you create the invoice. That way you don't have to worry about creating one payment, creating one invoice, and then linking the two. It just kind of happens simultaneously. So I'm going to go ahead and create this invoice, again, with the payment information here. If you don't have it in the payment tab, you can always, if you're creating an invoice and you have payment information, you can enter it in here. But if it is on the payment tab, it will just carry over. So I'm going to go ahead and click invoice. It's completed the order. Let me print that invoice just to show you. So you see it's a balance due of $0 because I had a total of $414.10, and then it created the payment, applied it automatically to this invoice. So this is a paid in full invoice, and it will sync over that way, both payment and invoice. All right, and then there's one more scenario where you may want to enter in a payment on the sales order as opposed to directly in the enter payment window. And that's with a pre-authorization of the customer's credit card. Again, this is going to be dependent on you having your credit card processor set up within Acctivate. So I will select I'm going to select the type of American Express. It's going to pre-fill in with the customer's saved credit card information. Now, what it will do is I have an order total of $467.38. The scheduled amount is the $424.45. That's where this number is coming from. But I'm going to change this to be a higher number. So we're going to authorize the card for $500. And that's because when we create the invoice, there may be some additional shipping charges, for example. And we want to be able to ensure that there's enough funds available for what we're shipping plus the shipping charges. So when I do that, I'm going to click authorize, and I'm going to get this pop up, and it's just kind of a notification saying that that's different than the scheduled amount. Do I want to change it? No, I don't. I want to authorize it for the $500. So now there's an authorization active for this order for this customer. The authorization will stick around. Typically, it's for 30 days, and then it drops off. So it will show up on their credit card as a pending transaction. It won't post until we capture against it. And you can, of course, remove an authorization. But when I go into the invoice screen, I get a slightly different look here, because it says I have a payment authorized for $500, 7/14 at 1:45 p.m. I only have the option to capture against that authorization. So I don't need to re-enter credit card information. It's not a separate charge. We're going to capture against that authorization. And when we do that, the amount that the capture is the amount that will be charged, and that's what the authorization goes away and gets converted to a charge, and that's what we'll post on their credit card. So in this case, all I have to do is leave it as charge CC and click invoice. And again, I get a transaction confirmation saying, the transaction ID and authorization. If you remove the authorization, that's fine. You can create a charge and capture, which is just charging their card. I'm sorry, an authorizing capture, which is just the same as entering in the credit card information and charging it without doing the authorization step. Okay, so again, they're very similar. The interpayment window is flexible in the sense that you can immediately record that payment, whether they have an invoice or not. You can apply it to multiple invoices. A lot of flexibility there. Entering payment information on a sales order is kind of a more specific scenarios where you want to authorize the card, and then you're going to capture against that authorization. Typically the card has already been charged, and it doesn't have to be a credit card. There could be some other payment that has already been processed but not recorded yet, and so you want to put that on the payment tab and create the invoice and the payment at the same time applied to each other. So that was the web store example. Okay, so we have entered in a few different types of payments. Let's go ahead and run a synchronization. And that's going to run. We'll switch over to QuickBooks. Okay, that's done. We come into QuickBooks. So let's look at the last payment we did, which was for the customer shirts. So I'm going to open up the Customer Center. Come down here to shirts. Okay, so here's my payment for the $424.45. I'm going to open that up. On the Reports tab, I can go to Process Payment Receipt. What you'll see here, this is one of the benefits of using QuickBooks Payments because it works with Acctivate and QuickBooks, so we synchronize more information with QuickBooks Payments. We're able to synchronize the transaction ID and authorization code. So that's great if you have someone processing payments and Acctivate, maybe a sales rep or something, and then someone on the accounting side that's in QuickBooks. They both have that information available at their fingertips. All right, so we'll go ahead and close that. Now, we enabled the Undeposited Funds account. I'm going to go to Chart of Accounts. And when we did that, it created this account automatically called Undeposited Funds. Again, it's an other current asset. So rather than adding this money to a bank account immediately, because most of my payments were credit cards, some of them were checks. I physically have taken the payment, but I haven't deposited it in my bank account. So it's going to sit in this Undeposited Funds account. Again, the point is we don't want to artificially inflate the bank account and show that we have that money when we don't yet. If you are using bank feeds, as a reminder, in QuickBooks, if you're using bank feeds, it will do some automatic reconciling and depositing for you. So that is something I would strongly recommend. If you go ahead and set that up if you can. I'll show you if you don't want to use bank feeds, there is a way to manually make the deposits, and that's under Banking, Make Deposits. And here are some payments to deposit. So I have some transactions here, and I can combine these payments and put them into a single deposit when I put them in. So let's say I have these two checks and I finally get to the bank, put them in. I can select these two. I can click OK. And it's combined them into a deposit for a total of $614.10. I can choose which account I want it to go to. We'll leave it at the checking account. You have the opportunity to take some cash back if you need to. But this is the transaction where it combines those payments. And again, once it's in this deposit, you can't edit some of that payment header information, and that's why we block it on the Acctivate side. So I click Save and Close. I go back to my chart of accounts. We will look at my checking account. Here's my deposit for $614.10. So, okay, so that is the deep dive of payments and Acctivate, and a little bit in QuickBooks. Because we sync the information both ways, there's some of those configuration steps. Some of them are optional. Again, if you don't have a payment processor, hopefully I illustrate to you why QuickBooks Payments is a really great solution, just because it works so well with both programs and it really simplifies this process. I'm going to take a look at some questions now, if we have any. Okay, don't see any questions yet. Okay, sorry, there are a few questions here. Can we process ACH or e-check payments and Acctivate in the new version? Currently, no. That is for sure something that is happening. It's on our roadmap. The new interpayment window was a prerequisite we had to complete first, and then now we can add e-checks. And I don't have an exact date on that, but it is something that we will have hopefully very soon. There's a good question here. What is the default of options and settings when updating not allowed for these credit card options? So I think that's referring to the user permissions, the view only, maintain, not allowed. The default for processing credit cards is not allowed. I believe the other ones are maintain, like the viewing the credit card information. But in order to process credit cards, you'll definitely need to go and set the process credit cards under the sales order section. Are you going to review credit cards, or will other payment methods be included in this webinar? The emphasis was on credit cards because there's more to credit cards than checks and cash, for example. But everything that's in checks and cash is also in credit cards. So I was focusing on credit cards just because the principles are the same. In fact, simpler when you're recording cash or check payments. Like I said, if you don't have a credit card processor set up in Acctivate or QuickBooks, that's fine. You can still enter in check payments. You can use the make deposits or bank feeds in QuickBooks. So, but yeah, same concept. Are you able to save more than one credit card per customer? Currently, no. That is a limitation in QuickBooks as well, and in Acctivate. That's something that we're interested in and looking at. So that's good feedback that you're asking about that. We will explore some options. Again, the interpayment window was something we haven't had for a long time, and there was a clear need for it. We've added it, and that now opens up some opportunities to explore some other avenues for payment features and enhancements. And I think tracking or storing multiple credit cards is something that we will look at. Okay, what happened if the credit card bounced? How to reverse the payment? Well, with credit cards, you will immediately get, I was showing you the successful credit cards where I got that message immediately pops up on screen. It has a big green check mark. If the card was declined, you would immediately get that same window, but with a big red X. It would be very difficult to mistake that as a success. And it will tell you that the card was declined, and it may give a reason. oh, I could probably simulate that, but you may get a reason such as card number invalid or something like that. For checks, if you put in a check and it bounces, you would correct that in QuickBooks. Again, once it's synchronized, you wouldn't be able to void that payment in Acctivate, but in QuickBooks, you could go and void it there. I could try and, let's see, we'll look at Bristol. Let's see if I can't. Let's do this. We'll do, yeah, I actually have a hard time. Oh, you know what I should do? Hold on. I'll put the expiration date. We'll hit charge and save. Oh, it's blocking me there. There are some ways to get failures. I have a test account and I can't, but you get the point. You would get an on-screen message that's very clear that has been the payment has been declined. All right. Any other questions? Those are good questions. All right. I think that's the end of the question. So thank you for joining us today. I really appreciate it. If you have any questions, please reach out to our support@activate.com. We will also be rolling out 11.1 previews starting this week. We're making contact with customers. So the interpayment window is in 11.1, and we are scheduling to message you. And if you haven't heard from us yet, give us a little bit of time. We're getting in touch with everyone. And if you haven't signed up for the preview and you would like to, you can go to, you should have gotten an email that has a link to it, or you can just create a support request for support@activate.com. All right, thank you.